Thank you for coming back on Geer Talk.
Talking gear.
This is your third appearance, making you our most frequent guest. So we got a little punch card for you. There'll be a free breakfast burrito whenever you come our way.
I still haven't got the first check from Alan, so you let him know that.
He's in the other room. We'll poke him after this. Michael, real quick on your background. When did you start at Shure?
I started Shure October 1976, and I was in sales originally. I was a regional sales manager. As a matter of fact, Southern California was one of my areas. So that's when I first started coming out there. I did that for about 5 years, and I really wasn't cut out for it, I felt. I was far more interested in the products. So in 81, I got the opportunity to become the product manager for what we called circuitry products back then. And that was mixers and anything that basically plugged into the wall or used a battery to operate. So that's how I got into doing the products that eventually led to IntelliMix.
Very cool. So then it was not very long after you joined that team. It was the early 80s, right? Shure had the AMS 22. Am I getting that right? The automatic mic system?
That was my first project. So when I became a product manager, there were two products dropped on my desk. One was the M267 mixer, which was a replacement for the M67 mixer. And I was very comfortable with that because I understood that. But there was another thing that was called the AGM, auto-gated microphone. And I had absolutely no idea what that meant. I was unfamiliar with automatic mixers. I really didn't know anything about that. So my learning curve was very steep. I had to learn very quickly what it was. And the one thing that became apparent to me was that the idea that we had was great. We basically had special microphones that had two cardioid cartridges inside of them placed back to back. And those two signals went back to the mixer, and the mixer compared the front signal to the back signal. So when the cartridge facing the talker was 10 dB louder than the cartridge facing away from the talker, the mic came out. So basically the threshold floated with ambient noise. Great idea. But, I had no idea what the competition was or anything else like that. So as I started looking into it, I started talking to dealers around the country who were installing automatic mixers, then a brand new technology. And they all said to me, they're too complicated. I can't figure out how to set them up, too many knobs and so forth. And so the concept I came up with was, if we could make this really simple, that you basically plug the microphone in and you turned up a volume control, that maybe that would help grow automatic mixers. And so we made it as simple as possible, and it did really well for us. Now, we didn't get the really big jobs, but we got all the city councils and all of the PTA meetings and so forth like that.
So you're saying 40 years ago there was an emphasis on ease of use, simplicity, making sure the system could be deployed correctly. That seems like a theme that we haven't gone too far away from.
Yeah, it sounds like today.
Yeah, exactly. And the way I tested it was when I helped write the installation manual, or actually it was the quick setup guide. I tested it out on people who were like secretaries who were very non-technical, and they're like, I can't do this. I said, just try it. And sure enough, they could set it up and they could operate. And I knew that we had a winner then. So the AMS, automatic microphone system, was our first voice-activated product. And of course, you might consider it really our first major conferencing product.
Well, and it became the building block to a larger, more complete system. That was the ST6000 Shure teleconferencing. And just as a reminder, we're talking the analog days. So when you're talking about comparing signals, everything, this is voltage running through a circuit.
Yep, exactly. And see, up until around in the late 70s, federal courts broke up AT&T. And at that time, when it happened, then other companies could make products that would go on the telephone line. Before that, only Western Electric products were allowed to be hooked up to telephone lines, nothing else. And so now when that happened, now Shure could bring out a teleconferencing product that could hook up the telephone line and be legal. Before that, it was illegal. You could not make anything like that. So when that change happened, we took the automatic microphone system, added in a telephone interface, added in a little power amplifier and so forth, and the ST6000 came out. Voice-activated microphones, loudspeaker on the table, interface to call, for your dial-up landline. That was it. So we were really one of the first to do teleconferencing in that manner. That was the ST6000, type 1, as we call it.
Is that the point in history where you coined the phrase, or did you coin the phrase IntelliMix on the first generation, the first product?
No, that was late. That was later. So what happened was that some people objected to having to use only our microphones for AMS and for the ST6001. Had to be the double element microphones, right? So some people wanted to use other ones, and you couldn't do it unless you had the double element mic. So an engineer here named Steve Jolstrom came up with what we call Type 2 gating, which basically used only a single element microphone and didn't require the double element. So then that was the ST6000 Type 2, and you can use whatever mics you wanted in that case. I came up with the idea after that came out was, what about a portable automatic mixer for broadcast? That had never been done before. 4-channel mixer, AC operated or battery operated, and it would do automatic mixing, turning microphones on and off for sports announcers, for talk shows, whatever like that. So that we started working on that. It was going to be called, well, it was called the FP410, Field Production, 4 input, 1 output, no operator, 410. That's what
that's the 0. Okay.
Yep. And when I was working on it, I started to come up that we had Type 2 gating, which Type 2 gating is not a really exciting term, right? What kind of gating is it? Oh, Type 2. But it basically had noise adaptive threshold, it had max bus, and it had last mic lock on. So those 3 circuits all worked at once to make it work properly. I said, it's got to have a name. We didn't have a name for it. So I started sitting and I came up, I started writing down stuff. And one thing I wrote down was intelligent mixer, right? And then eventually that got contracted to IntelliMix. It was not used, it hadn't been used as a trademark before. So our legal department said, thumbs up. And so we used the IntelliMix term for the first time with the FP410. And that would have been 1990, I believe.
Wow.
Very, very cool. And can we break down a little bit each of those 3 core components of IntelliMix? So noise adaptive threshold at the time, and I believe still today, right? This is unique technology from Shure. How is a noise adaptive threshold operating differently than a standard threshold in an auto mixer?
It has the ability, and I'm not an expert at the circuitry level, so let me just kind of give you the simple version of it, is that it has the ability to distinguish between speech-like sounds, which are rapidly starting and stopping, and non-speech-like sounds, like the AC in my office here, or a fan or something like that, which is very consistent. So it can distinguish between the two. And then anything that it sees as a consistent background noise, that raises or lowers the threshold above that. So that's kind of noise adaptive threshold. Max bus is, let's say we're in a room, there's 4 of us talking, we're all talking. My microphone, my voice doesn't just reach my microphone, of course, it travels to all the other microphones. What max bus does is it says, okay, what microphone is picking up that person the loudest? And then it decides to activate that microphone for that person. So 1 talker, 1 mic on, 2 talker, 2 mics on, 3 micers, 3 talkers, 3 mics on. That's how that works. And then the last thing was last mic lock on. So when there was silence in the room or nobody talked, you really didn't want all the microphones to go off, because if you're listening to the audio, it sounds like everything disappeared.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. So basically last mic lock on says, okay, whatever the most recent microphone is, keep it on until another microphone activates. So you do noise adaptive threshold, max bus, and last mic lock on, all operating at once, and that's IntelliMix.
And so then you've got IntelliMix, it's in the FP410. How quickly after that do we come out with the SCM 410 and 810? Now we're into the early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s. Literally the SCM 810 was developed like in an afternoon. I was the product manager at the time, a guy named John Tatulis and Matt Anderson. Matt was an engineer. John Tatulis worked for me in product management. By the way, they went on to form Sound Devices. Those are the 2 guys that started Sound Devices. Anyway, so we were sitting there one day and we said, the FP410 is really great for broadcast and so forth, but it's not what sound contractors want. Sound contractors want more inputs and they want something that's rack mountable and so forth. So John and Matt and I literally sat in my office one day and we sketched out in about 4 hours the SCM 810. And talk about a successful product. If I'm not mistaken, I think we still sell it today, right?
We certainly do. That was a productive afternoon on your guys' part.
It was, yeah, exactly. So that was 1990. So it's 35 years now that automatic mixer has been out there. And I think the reason it continues to sell, it's simple.
Yeah.
Right? Plug it in, turn it on, go away.
Yeah.
You know. So the SCM 410 came out a little bit later. You know, some people said 8 channels is too much, so we brought out the 410 as well. And the FP 410, I think that stayed around for about 10 years. I'm not certain. So that whole thing was all based upon IntelliMix. So that's where the term. Now it means almost, you know, it's still used today, but it means much more than I meant it for in the first place. By the way, I never got a raise for creating that name either.
I was going to say, does the patent office have your name somewhere where they trademarked?
The trademark does.
Excellent.
But, you know,
excellent.
So yeah, so it's I'm, you know, delighted it's still around 35 years after I created it, but I never thought it would, you know, grow into this whole thing encompassing a whole product line now.
Right. And can you believe, right, the last time we spoke to you, it was about the SM7B on the anniversary of the SM7. There's another similar story, right? This product from 40 years ago, which is successful and doing well, but then becomes a rocket ship kind of late in its career. And now we have the SM7DB and the MV7, and it's a huge part of our wired microphone portfolio. And then similarly with IntelliMix, there it is 35 years ago, important, successful, but look at what it's become in just the last 18 months.
It's the core of our ecosystem now, right? And we're putting IntelliMix in as many products as can support it because it seems to get the job done.
Yeah, so it was about 5 or 6 years ago, Steve Jolstrom, the guy who created Type 2 gating, is an independent consultant. He left Shure in the late 80s and basically decided he wanted to work on different things. Anyways, Steve lives in Chicago. We see each other every now and then. And I think he's got about 22 or 24 patents to his name now. So we had lunch a while ago, and he said, you know, I've been thinking about the Type 2 gating. He still calls it Type 2 gating. He says, and I've been trying to think about a way how to improve this. This is 35 years later. He says, I can't think of a better way. I can't think of a way to improve it. And really, you think about it now it's in in digital language, if you will, but the concept is still the same.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this has been a great way to understand IntelliMix kind of from its first principles. Thank you, Michael. We so appreciate your time. Look forward to finding another topic to bring to your attention sometime down the road. Maybe we'll get you here in studio.
We'll get the right event to get you out to the West Coast. Probably in the winter, if you don't mind. We'll get you away from.
That's not a problem. But, you know, we only have 100 years of history to look at. So I've got a few other subjects we can discuss.
Thank you, Michael. Take care. Be well.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.